Most people think sitting is just resting, your body taking a break, using less energy, doing less work, while you focus on whatever's in front of you. But here's the thing. The real story is happening inside your leg muscles in an enzyme most people have never heard of, and it starts shutting down within minutes of you sitting down, far faster than most people would ever expect. Stick with me here because I'm going to walk through exactly what's happening, then give you a complete practical protocol you can start using today. Let's talk about lipoprotein lipase, or LPL. LPL is an enzyme that lives primarily in your muscle tissue, and its job is to pull fat out of your bloodstream so your muscles can use it for fuel. Think of it as a gatekeeper standing at the entrance of your muscle cells, actively grabbing fat molecules from your blood and ushering them inside to be burned as energy. When you're standing, walking, or generally active, this gatekeeper is working steadily, keeping your blood fat levels in check and keeping your metabolism engaged. Here's what happens when you sit down. Within about an hour of sitting still, LPL activity in your leg muscles begins to drop, and research has shown it can fall by as much as 90% during extended, uninterrupted sitting. That gatekeeper essentially stops showing up for work. Fat that would normally be pulled out of your bloodstream and burned stays circulating instead, and over the course of a sedentary day, this contributes to elevated blood fats, reduced insulin sensitivity, and a measurable dip in how efficiently your body is handling energy overall. Here's what this feels like in daily life. That sluggish, heavy feeling by mid-afternoon after a few hours at your desk. Stiffness in your hips and lower back that seems to build the longer you sit, regardless of how good your chair is. A sense that your energy crashes harder on days you're mostly sedentary, even if you ate the exact same meals as a more active day. Sound familiar? Most people respond to this by trying to make up for it with a single workout at the end of the day. And here's the problem with that approach. Research has consistently shown that even a vigorous hour of exercise doesn't fully offset the metabolic effects of 8 or more hours of uninterrupted sitting. It's not that exercise doesn't matter, it matters enormously, but this specific LPL suppression mechanism responds to a different kind of intervention entirely, one based on frequency and breaking up sitting time, not total exercise volume alone. Okay, here's the good news. There's a specific brief movement habit, just 3 minutes, that has been shown in research to reactivate this enzyme and meaningfully counteract this suppression, even without needing a formal workout. Ready? Let's get into it. The key concept here is that LPL responds specifically to muscle contraction, and it responds within minutes, not hours. Here's the analogy I like to use. Think of LPL like a factory worker who needs to physically move around to stay switched on and productive. If that worker sits motionless at a desk all day, they gradually become less engaged, less alert, less ready to jump into action. But it doesn't take a full shift change to re-engage them. Just a few minutes of standing up, stretching, and moving is often enough to snap them back into an active, ready state, at least temporarily, before the cycle of stillness begins pulling them back down again. Here's the mechanism, step by step. When your leg muscles contract, even briefly, through standing, walking, or simple bodyweight movements, this muscular activity directly signals LPL to become active again in that tissue. Research using muscle biopsies has shown that standing up and doing some light movement for just a few minutes produces a measurable increase in LPL activity, essentially reversing a portion of the suppression that built up during the preceding period of sitting. Here's why the frequency of these breaks matters more than most people realize. Because LPL suppression begins relatively quickly after you sit down. And because the reactivation from movement is also relatively quick but temporary, the research suggests that frequent brief breaks throughout the day are more effective for this specific mechanism than a single longer break, even if the single longer break involves more total movement overall. It's about resetting that switch repeatedly throughout your day, not just once. Now here's how this connects to long-term health beyond just that day's fat metabolism. Research following large groups of people over years has consistently linked total daily sitting time, independent of how much someone exercises outside of work, to higher rates of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and even certain markers of accelerated aging. This has led researchers to describe prolonged sitting as an independent risk factor, separate from lack of exercise entirely, meaning someone who exercises regularly but also sits for 10 or more hours a day still carries meaningfully elevated risk related to that sitting time specifically. This is where the specific 3-minute habit comes in, because deliberately breaking up sitting time at regular intervals directly targets this exact mechanism. Here's exactly what the habit looks like. Every 30 to 60 minutes, stand up and spend 3 minutes in continuous, deliberate movement. This can be a brisk walk around your office or home, a set of bodyweight squats, calf raises, or simply marching in place with real intent, not a slow shuffle. The key detail is genuine muscular engagement for the full 3 minutes, ideally involving your legs specifically, since that's where the bulk of the relevant research on LPL suppression has focused. Research on interrupted sitting has shown that people who break up their sitting time this way have measurably better post-meal blood sugar and fat metabolism markers throughout the day compared to those who sit for equivalent total time without these breaks, even when total daily exercise outside of work hours is similar between both groups. My tip: set a recurring timer or alarm on your phone or computer, since it's very easy to lose track of time and let 2 or 3 hours pass without moving at all, especially during focused work. Treating this as a non-negotiable appointment, the same way you'd treat a scheduled meeting, tends to work far better than relying on remembering to do it spontaneously throughout a busy day. Now, let's talk about why 3 minutes specifically, and why this doesn't need to be a formal exercise session, because understanding this distinction genuinely matters for how sustainable this habit is. This isn't about burning a significant number of calories through the movement itself. 3 minutes of squats or walking burns relatively few calories in the traditional sense. It's about the specific muscular signaling effect on LPL and blood flow, which research suggests responds meaningfully to even this brief a duration. This is genuinely good news for people with demanding, sedentary jobs, because this specific metabolic benefit doesn't require leaving your desk for a full workout, changing clothes, or breaking a heavy sweat. That said, this 3-minute habit works best alongside regular structured exercise, not instead of it, since overall cardiovascular fitness and muscle mass provide broader health benefits that this specific habit alone doesn't fully replace. Let's talk about standing desks here too, since they come up constantly in this conversation and deserve honest treatment. Standing desks can help somewhat, since standing itself involves more muscular engagement than sitting. However, research has shown that simply standing still for long periods without actually moving doesn't provide nearly the same LPL reactivating benefit as genuine movement does, and prolonged static standing carries its own downsides, including increased strain on your lower back and legs. The real target isn't standing versus sitting as a binary choice, it's regular movement, regardless of your starting position. Let's talk about walking meetings and calls too, since this is a practical way to naturally build in more of these movement breaks without requiring extra dedicated time. If your job allows for phone calls or certain meetings to happen while walking, even around your own home or office, this naturally accomplishes the same goal as a dedicated movement break, folded into time you're already spending on something else. Now, if you're finding this helpful, this is exactly the kind of thing I like breaking down on this channel, taking apart the real mechanisms behind everyday habits, not just generic get up and move more advice without explaining why the timing and frequency actually matter. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe because there's a lot more of this coming. Let's talk about a few other factors that compound with this same mechanism, since sitting doesn't operate in isolation from the rest of your daily habits. Blood flow and vascular health tie in directly here as well. Prolonged sitting reduces blood flow specifically in your legs, and research has shown this can measurably impair the function of your blood vessel lining, the endothelium, within just a few hours of uninterrupted sitting. The same movement breaks that reactivate LPL also restore healthier blood flow patterns, providing a second related benefit from the exact same 3-minute habit. Posture and musculoskeletal strain matter here too. Extended sitting, particularly in a forward hunch position common at desks, contributes to tightness in your hip flexors and weakness in your glutes over time, a pattern that can contribute to lower back discomfort independent of the metabolic effects we focused on today. The movement breaks, especially if they include some hip extension or glute activation like squats, help address this postural pattern simultaneously. Let's talk about diet and how it interacts with the same sitting mechanism. Eating a large carbohydrate-heavy meal and then sitting motionless for hours afterward is a particularly unfavorable combination, since your body's ability to clear that resulting blood sugar and fat from your bloodstream is exactly what's being suppressed by inactivity during that window. This is part of why a short walk after meals, something we've discussed in other contexts on this channel, pairs so well with this broader sitting interruption strategy. Both are addressing the same underlying mechanism from slightly different angles. Let's talk about sleep too, since poor sleep has been shown to independently reduce next-day physical activity levels and increase sedentary behavior, creating a cycle where poor sleep leads to more sitting, which then contributes to the metabolic issues we've discussed today, which can in turn further disrupt sleep quality. Breaking this cycle at any point, including simply committing to more frequent movement breaks, regardless of how tired you feel, can help interrupt this pattern. Let's talk timeline, because I want to set realistic expectations here. The acute metabolic benefit from breaking up sitting, improved post-meal blood sugar and fat handling, is something research has measured within the very same day of implementing these breaks consistently. The longer-term benefits, reduced cardiovascular risk markers, and improved overall metabolic health build over weeks and months of consistent practice, similar to most sustainable health habits discussed on this channel. This isn't a replacement for regular structured exercise or medical care if you have diagnosed cardiovascular or metabolic conditions. This habit works well alongside both, not instead of either one. Let me answer a few common questions, since I know these will be on your mind. First, does this really matter if I already exercise regularly outside of work? Yes, and this is one of the more surprising findings in this area of research. Sitting time appears to be an independent risk factor, separate from how much you exercise outside of sitting hours. Someone who runs 5 miles each morning but then sits for 10 hours at a desk still carries elevated risk related specifically to that sitting time, which is exactly why this habit matters even for people who are already quite fit and active outside of work. Second, do I need to do a full 3 minutes every single time, every single hour, without exception? Consistency matters more than perfection here. If you can only manage a quick 1-minute stand and stretch during some hours, that's still better than remaining completely still, though the fuller 3-minute version, done as often as realistically possible throughout your day, provides the strongest benefit based on the available research. Third, what if my job genuinely doesn't allow me to get up that often, like certain driving or specific desk-bound roles? Even brief seated movements, ankle pumps, calf raises while seated, shifting position frequently provide some benefit, though standing and walking are more effective based on the research specifically examining LPL activation. Look for any natural breaks in your schedule, even short ones, and use them deliberately for movement rather than remaining seated throughout. So here's the bigger picture I want you to walk away with. This was never just about sitting being generally bad for you in some vague sense. It's about a specific enzyme, LPL, that quietly shuts down within an hour of sitting still, affecting how your body handles fat and blood sugar throughout your entire day, and it's about a related decline in blood flow and vascular function that compounds alongside it. The 3-minute movement habit, done every 30 to 60 minutes, directly and specifically counteracts this mechanism in a way that a single daily workout, no matter how good, genuinely cannot fully replace on its own. Combine this consistently with regular structured exercise, mindful meal timing, and good sleep, and you're giving your body the actual conditions it needs to stay metabolically healthy throughout an otherwise sedentary day, rather than accumulating hours of suppressed fat metabolism that a single evening workout can't fully undo. If you want to go deeper, my next video breaks down exactly how this same sitting mechanism connects to visceral fat accumulation specifically, and why some people who eat well and exercise still struggle with stubborn belly fat because of this exact pattern. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.